we have another half an hour to discuss. Then I wanted to start from Kaywin and Gabriele about just taking a presentation from Director Tanaka about the collection display and the temporary exhibitions. I wanted to ask you about your museum case. Is the balance of collection display and temporary exhibitions, and if that had been changed since the COVID time.
Thank you. We're probably a bit of an anomaly in that about 85% of our annual attendance comes to see the permanent collection, and we're not exhibition driven. We tend to do 2 different exhibitions simultaneously, one in the West Building, which is the Old Master Collection, European and American, and then Contemporary in the East Building. And right now our attendance is about the same as it was before COVID, although the makeup is a bit different. We have fewer foreign tourists, but more people from the region attending.
And is it the same ticket, or you charge different price for the different exhibitions?
We don't charge
You're
anything.
Free. Okay,
yes,
okay.
the
You're
National
free.
Gallery is
I
free
see.
entrance, free exhibitions, free concerts, lectures, films. We don't charge for anything.
I see.
Yeah. The American taxpayers pay for it.
So the main revenue is coming from where?
About 75% of our budget comes from the American taxpayers through the federal government, and the rest comes from our endowment fund.
Okay. What about you in your case?
So, very conscious that exhibitions are a very useful vehicle for carrying out our work. So there is quite a bit of discussion nowadays about how valuable or how problematic the exhibition model has become. We believe that it's still a very, very valuable instrument. It's an opportunity to showcase the collection. It's an opportunity to showcase research on the collection. It's the opportunity to bring in different sorts of art from the ones that people are used to seeing. It's a way of keeping the museum in the public eye. It's a way of winning new audiences. So I think the exhibition as a format, as a model, continues to be extremely valuable. We at the National Gallery often base our exhibition program on the collection itself. So they're very often research exhibitions. So we've recently begun a new series called Discover, and we focus on a single masterpiece in the collection and build a medium-sized exhibition around a single discover item. The most recent one we opened last week was on a pastel by Leotard that we recently acquired, and next year's will be on Constable's Kaywin. So we do about 10 exhibitions, between 10 and 12 exhibitions in the gallery every year. Only 2 of those are charging. All the others are also free. But charging, of course, is a challenge. Exhibitions are expensive to put on. We heard about it in Mr. Tanaka's exposition. They're expensive to put on, and we need to charge the public to visit. The average price of an exhibition in London is about $25. It's a very substantial outlay for the public. But we try and balance that off by providing special visiting opportunities. We do a special program called Pay What You Wish during the last 3 hours of Friday evening. And as I say, the remainder of the program is free to visit.
I also wanted to ask you, maybe 3 of you, about your collection policy and maybe the collection, the speed of collection. Like, is there any sort of targeting number that you have to increase the number, or how do you decide how many works by in a year? And if, again, any collection policy has changed in the recent years? maybe Tanaka-san, you can start.
国立西洋美術館の場合には、油彩画がですね、年1点から2点という感じの収蔵スピードになっています。で、最近の傾向としましては、もともとの松方コレクションが近代のフランス美術が中心だったので、うちの美術館の所蔵品はやはりフランス美術にとても偏っていたわけですね。ですので、どれだけヨーロッパ西洋というのはもっと広い地理的にも幅があるものなので、もう少し広くヨーロッパの美術というものを見せられるということも考えてですね、最近では北欧のですね作品を買うように、購入することを行ってきました。なので19世紀のフィンランドを代表するアクセレ・ガレン・カンレラの作品、これは4バージョンある作品で、もう1点はロンドンのナショナルギャラリーにある作品ですけれども、また、スウェーデンの劇作家として知られてますけども、スリントベリーの、作品を購入するという形で、もうちょっと、実は西洋美術といっても日本の人には、フランス美術の方が馴染みがあるかもしれないけれども、もっと、幅の広いものなんだよということを見せるように、心がけるようにしています。
We don't acquire contemporary artworks. We work with contemporary artists, but we don't acquire their works. Sometimes we're in partnership with regional museums who will be the beneficiaries of the collaboration and will receive a work of art by that artist. But we, as the National Gallery, don't acquire works by contemporary artists. So our collection remit takes us to about 1910, 1920, something like that. And then the Tate Gallery takes over the national responsibility for modern and contemporary painting. We operate under the 1992 Museums and Galleries Act, which requires us to add to the collection. It doesn't say how many or what sort of works they should be. It says that they should be works of notable quality. So we're able to acquire maybe 2 or 3 pictures a year. We try to strengthen very strong holdings, so add excellence to excellence. We also try and expand the range of things that we show. We've also taken an interest in Scandinavian pictures in more recent years, but also painting in the Western tradition, not just in Europe. So, for example, painting from Australia or painting from Italy, from America, and looking more broadly as we go forward. And also, we have a particular interest in plein air sketches. These small sketches made by artists, mostly in the 18th and 19th centuries, usually made in the landscape. That's an area of specialization for the gallery as well.
So I think in America, the general average is that about 85% of art museum collections come from donations from private individuals versus purchase, so just a small percentage purchase. And that's probably true for the National Gallery. We do purchase works of art, and our collection ranges from European Old Masters, early American art, and then modern and contemporary art that's global. And we also collect photographs and prints and drawings. And since we collect works on paper, we acquire hundreds and hundreds of works each year. Those larger numbers made up by works on paper. And our current collection focus is to try to prioritize acquiring work by women artists and artists of color, which is true of most American museums right now. And I know a lot of global museums are really looking to acquire more work by certainly at least women artists. And about 92% of the collection of the National Gallery was made by white male artists, which represents the history of our collecting, and we value those collections very much. So it's not an either or. It's that, yes, where we have resources and it works, we'd like to acquire more women and artists of color. But having said that, we also still acquire European old master works of art. So
it was very interesting when Kaywin said nation becomes your community when you came to the National Gallery. But to think of your nation as a community, what difference does it make when you plan a program or making a decision for acquisition?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's very much how we're thinking about the future, because traditionally our service to the nation has been people who walk through our door, and our impact around the rest of the country has been limited to loans to other museums for exhibitions, which we do a lot of, and occasional teacher programs. And so right now we're really thinking about a very broad national strategy. And of course, the easiest way to do that is digital. And we've really been focusing on a new kind of digital program, and particularly with education. Earlier in our history, we used to mail out these giant boxes of printed images of paintings from the collection on cardboard to teachers across America. I love the idea of posting them, and then teachers would return them like a lending library. Well, now the internet makes it all quite easy. So we're thinking about that. We're thinking about a lot more long-term loans of the collection to museums across America. And then also looking at some real partnerships so that it's not just us sending things to other institutions, but we recognize we have as much to learn from museums across America. And your question about community, because of our national status, the museum is located right next to the United States Capitol. We are very much focused on sort of nation and not as consistently on our community in Washington, D.C. And so we have a lot to learn from museums, in Mobile, Alabama, for example, Memphis, Tennessee, how they serve their communities. So we're excited about a two-way partnership across the country.
But you are part of the Smithsonian.
No, we're not actually. And I didn't mention this, but really there are only two sort of national systems of museums in America. There's the National Gallery of Art, which is completely separate. And then there are the 20 or so Smithsonian museums, which is a totally different organization.
Mm-hmm. So do you try to do something together, or is it with the Smithsonian institution?
We do often. And for example, we currently have an exhibition of contemporary Native American art, and we don't have a curator of Native American art at the National Gallery. We don't have in-house expertise. And it's a culture, it's a very rich, vibrant, living culture, and one that requires real cultural sensitivity. And so our colleagues at the National Museum of the American Indian, which is right across the mall from us, really helped us with this exhibition. We couldn't have done it without them. And then next year we're working with the Natural History Museum, which is located next to us. And we have an exhibition called Little Beasts, looking at illustrations of insects and creatures in 16th and 17th century Dutch painting. And we're working with the curators at the Natural History Museum. So we do that as much as possible.
You have good neighbors.
I just want to say one thing about, how do you play that national role? That's the big question that we challenge ourselves with. How do you ensure that your institution, in our case it's London-based, how do you ensure that it is a collection for everyone? That's the ambition, that's the aspiration. How do you do that in practical terms? And 4 years ago, we acquired a painting by a woman artist, by Artemisia Gentileschi, the 17th century Baroque painter. And we decided that the first thing we would do is to take it out on the road, not interestingly to museums, but to places where people congregate, where communities can be found. So the picture ended up being shown in a library in Glasgow. It ended up being shown in a secondary school in Newcastle. It ended up being shown in a doctor's surgery in York, and then it went to a woman's prison in Surrey, in southern England. So that sense of the gallery looking for ways to activate its responsibility to local communities, part of the national structure, by taking pictures into community centres, into shopping centres, into food banks post-COVID as well, was a very, very interesting experience for us. 10 years ago, we'd have said it's not possible. These pictures are too fragile, security issues, insurance issues. But now we need to think differently. We need to think differently. And I'm delighted to say that, we were supported in-house, we were supported by the government, and we found sponsors to help us do that.
Sounds amazing. So you had to build like a special wall and...
Yeah, depending where the work went, it went in a vitrine, or frankly in prison, no one was going to steal it. So there we put it directly on the wall.
How do you play national role?
コミュニティっていう点からお話をさせていただきたいと思うんですけども、ちょっと英語に訳しづらいかもしれないんですが、修学旅行というものが、日本には、ありますけれども、西洋美術館には日本中の、高校生中学生が学生時代の旅行として西洋美術館を訪ねてくるということがあります。で、高校生は現在基本的には入場無料ですので、日本中の、高校生たち子どもたちが一度はですね、できるだけ西洋美術館の作品を見てもらえるような機会が提供できている。で、その意味では日本全体をですね、一つのコミュニティとして考えることが特にその活動は、それを象徴しているものかなっていうふうに思ってます。で、もう一つ前半のセッションでディスカッションされましたけども、ナショナルミュージアムのモットー、one of the most important function is something transnational and international, right? そうですね。なので、そういったトランスナショナルやインターナショナルな役割を、果たしていくというものもですね、それこそがナショナルミュージアムというものが持っている、役割なのだろうというふうに思っています。